Is my blackness really that scary? That you fear me, stare at me, not even compare me, but you dare me? See, I got the degree, athletic ability, even been on TV, AT&T Park, Oakland Coliseum. Now this dude over here didn't know I was an engineer. 18 years on that ship, swirling on that ship. Gotta forget that ship. See, now that I flipped the script and I'm on top of the ship, you a corporate tic-tac getting found in the system you call capitalism, but I call systematic nepotism. You winning while standing, others is running but not moving. Now look, they stopping, they watching, they pausing. You, me, we echo, just change the game. You ignore me, non-supporting me, you give your dollar, send your dollar tonight, Gucci, even the new hippie yogi. But what about your dreams, your life, your vision? Don't forget about me, I mean me as in community. You see, group economics is the way. I see you, I am you. Just say Ubuntu. We gon' fight together, we gon' struggle together. You winning, I'm smiling. They losing. You winning, I'm smiling. They losing. Now this dude over here tried to stick the dogs on me. In the process they interrogated me. They found out more than they knew about me. That my resume was more profound than they was willing to acknowledge. See, what you don't understand in this systematic, oppressive, monarch, mind control, abusive system is that you're double daring me to oppose you with the same abuses you exhibit on me. But see, you couldn't handle it. You'd actually feel manhandled by it. You scream harassment, and you know what? They, he, she might buy it. You say Obama, I say, what about my big mama? You say gay rights, I say, can I be undercover? See, this blackness you cannot hide or deny. But if I was incognito like Batman, drop kicking this multinational Monsanto man, this corporate ship, I am done, man. See, it's as if your existence is a penance to indifference. It's as if your existence is a penance to indifference. See, when you left here all alone, realize like me, him, are long gone, you gon' really know the world had it all wrong. You on that different tip. You like oppression yet, ignoring racism tip like Ferguson, Trayvon, Jordan, and Oscar, yep. Submit the same qualifications on the resume, but the other dude gets hired, yep. See, it's not as simple as people make it seem, yo. I have been in the game. Now them black girls be rocking. Got love for them cause my mama and daddy taught me game. See, I got love for them cause my mama and daddy taught me game. Now you understand what I'm saying. This corporate ship ain't playing. Mama, you never told me, but you did tell me. Mama, you never told me, but you did prepare me.
Okay.
And 3, 2, 1.
Hey guys, welcome to another B-Side Guys interview. Today we have a distinct pleasure. We have Rafa how do you say the last part, Rafa? Introduce yourself.
Rafa Selase.
Selase. Okay. I didn't want to butcher it. I figured I could get Rafa, but I was like, yeah, the last one, hands off.
Rafa, for the split screen, can you move a little bit to your right? A little bit more? Perfect. Right there.
Yeah, there we go.
Because we're split into 3 on the live stream or whatever. But yeah, this is good. All right, sorry. Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah,
we're breaking up a little bit. I think what he's asking is your name. So what is Rafa Selase? Where does that come from?
It's an African language, so it means God heals and God hears.
Okay.
So
cool.
there's several different meanings, like from the Ghanaian meaning, and then but basically it means God heals and God hears. Like if you ever heard that term, Jehovah Rapha.
Right.
Rapha.
Okay.
Yeah. So it has a meaning. I think it's a good meaning, right? We need people to be heard, and we need some healing.
Definitely, yeah. I noticed you used. I mean, it's not the same language, but in the song that we just now, or maybe it was the second song. I can't remember, but no, it was the song we just now heard. Used the word Ubuntu. Is that how you say that word?
Right. Exactly.
Which also kind of has a message of like connection and within humanity, right?
Yeah, that's unity.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so unity. So Ubuntu means unity or together, to come together. So and that was from a friend of mine who's from Zambia, and he's actually part of the Zulu tribe. So really interesting guy from UK is Dr. Oscar Mwanga. I was in Brazil with him a couple years ago, and he was telling me just these amazing stories. But one term that he stuck on was Ubuntu.
Right.
So this is something that, as I was writing Mama, You Never Told Me, it was just something that hit my mind, and that's kind of how I write. And
very stream of consciousness.
Yeah. I don't take a lot of time to write. It kind of just either stops, like a water faucet, it either comes or it's not there.
Yeah, definitely. So you're one of those writers that waits on the spirit or the passion to hit you rather than necessarily sitting down and writing every single day.
Yeah. I don't try to write every day. Like I wrote 2 poems recently, and I start off from the basics of writing poetry.
Right.
I mean, foundation. So I'll start there, and then from there, if it's poetic, then you can turn it into whatever you want. You can turn it into a song. You just add your hook, your verses, and you already have your verses, so you can just write your hook, and you can go with it from there. But and then if you're either spoken word or rap,
right,
then you could just take it from there, just depending on what your delivery style is, right? It becomes very easy from poetry. So
yeah, I was about to say you're not quite hip hop, but I also think there's a little bit more going on with it than just strictly spoken word, because it does have those hooks that you talked about, and it has the repetition, and it really fits into the music very well. I know one of your influences is Gil Scott-Heron, and we actually wrote a piece of yours that's called "The Revolution Will Be on Facebook." We wrote a piece about it on the blog, and that's a reference to Gil Scott-Heron. The revolution will not be televised. So I was just wondering if you could give us a little bit of background about your influences, maybe with Gil Scott-Heron. And how you view yourself fitting into the whole culture of spoken word and the beat poets and all that.
I mean, Gil Scott-Heron, I think, is the father, of hip hop, jazz rap,
Right.
Jazz poetry, or proto rap is what it could be called too. So for me, I mean, my father, and mother, I'm from the Bay Area, California, so, it was very rich in culture.
Right.
And, I mean, my father tells me stories of watching Miles Davis, all of these different people. You can go watch it for $5. So I grew up with a lot of this music, and he was just someone that really stuck to me. And it was so interesting because I was hearing that style as I started. People were saying, you sound like the last poets or Gil Scott-Heron, or
Yeah.
And so obviously the revolution will be on Facebook was kind of my celebration of Gil Scott-Heron and my take on this new world that we're living in, kind of the contemporary version. So Um, Even the fact that we're even having this conversation is cool. But
right.
yeah, Scott Heron's influence, obviously, obviously Tupac, and everybody says Tupac, but Tupac, the fact that he was conscious and he had a purpose, and he seemed to, while he did have his gangster rap, he was also very conscious. And Tupac, I think, understood things on a deeper level than many people gave him credit for.
Well, yeah, I mean, he wrote like conventional poetry as well, and obviously studied philosophy with his whole Machiavelli, sort of mindset. So definitely,
yeah. I mean, so people like that, Hugh Masekela, is definitely, he just passed away recently, so that's an inspiration of mine. Fela Kuti, Donny Hathaway, those people, E40.
Right.
I mean, given we're from the same town, E40 is someone that he created a whole different language in rap, right? The words and everything, a whole different style, and just his approach, not only from the artistic side, but then also from the business side, to where he did it his way. Meaning, the style of E40 today, it sounds a little bit different, but it's basically the same. So, and he just kept putting out great albums, and now he's one of the most respected people, I think, in all of hip hop.
Yeah, most definitely. So what do you view as your goals? So, I mean, it doesn't seem to me that your goal is to go make a lot of money with a hit album or something. The album that most of the songs that we've focused on and will continue to focus on come off of is called Red-Blooded American. And it seems to have a very specific intent, I guess. Do you have a specific intent with your music?
Well, I mean, I think, my music is, I like to talk about some of the difficult things that we don't talk about, but
right.
Maybe from a perspective that doesn't even point the finger, but it just highlights the truth. It doesn't come from a standpoint of, I don't think, hate, I would like to say, but, it just exposes. I mean, I think I'm just, an artist and expressing myself, and, you want to, I mean, it's not like my goal is to be Jay-Z or something, but I definitely want it to be a success. And I think, people listening to the music and streams, and, obviously, money is an exchange of people appreciating your music. Not necessarily that I have to be, at the forefront, but that there's an equal exchange, and, I'm able to appreciate that exchange.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think all artists appreciate the money. So, by the way, if any of our audience is out there listening, we're going to link everything in the show notes of the podcast, in the Facebook comments. So yeah, go spend some money on Rafa. But yeah, so you said you point out some issues in society, but you wouldn't call it like hateful or angry, and I would agree with you. I think that you do a really nice job of showing things on both sides, and kind of talking more about how everyone is being taken advantage of, not necessarily one group or another or whatever, although obviously it's worse in certain communities. But I really like, so one of the lines says, you call capitalism, but I call it systematic nepotism. You winning while standing while others is running but not moving. Look, they stop, watch, paused. We just changed the game. And then you also talk about people sending their money to Nike, Gucci, and yoga, but not about their dreams and vision and art, like you mentioned before. So let's start to get into a more of a uncomfortable conversation about society as a whole, and what some of the things that you're pointing out in this particular song and in the album as a whole that you view as an ill of society. So do you think capitalism itself is wrong, that crony capitalism, the way that it is set up right now, is, or how do you view all of that?
Okay, wow.
I know, yeah, that's a big...
Yes, a lot. So the beautiful thing is, so like race is at the forefront.
Right.
But then you have, three people, Seth, Caleb, Rafa on a live stream right now, and we're different shades, right?
Right.
And we're on this Skype because we share similar interests, in my music. So obviously, so things aren't as bad as what they say, but then at the same time,
they are real.
They are real,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So we can still come together, and that's what makes music powerful. But there's still some real issues, and the music is what this art and creativity is what can bring us together. Now, on the flip side, you talked about crony capitalism. Obviously, that is big. Well, crony, people don't know what that is. That would be, corporations, creating legislation, creating, policies that only benefit them, that limit the powers and rights of individuals, right? So,
right. Well, I think it's beneficial for a lot of those corporations, or the elite, or whatever you want to call it, to keep us as in the division that we're talking about, focused on that and divided and talking, blaming it on each other instead of looking up and blaming it on the system as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, like race was something that was introduced, here, about 450 years ago. So that before then, race wasn't the same construct that it is now. But at the same time, yeah, you have corporations, you have politicians that are using race to divide people. And even when you look at what's happening right now, it's sort of whether or not, our leader of this country believes or is racist or not, whether or not he is or not, the fact that
I'll say it, he is, but go ahead.
Yeah, so and I'm not scared, but the point, I'm very careful with the words. But he used that to galvanize a base. So what he realized is that he could galvanize people through using race.
Yeah, at the worst, he's like a cynical opportunist that's using that as a tool.
Yes, he's smarter than what people give him credit for.
I think that's true.
Yeah. He's not just tweeting for fun. When he does something, he's doing it with a specific purpose in mind, and he knows he's going to get a certain reaction, and obviously that's going to divide people. For example, LeBron James just started school in Akron, Ohio. Our leader tweeted against him. So what that did was it basically, anyone that could now appreciate that on all sides of races, cultures, religion, that could appreciate what LeBron James did. Now they're choosing a side because of what the leader of the free nation said.
When it detracted from what was a good news cycle about that to turning into the same old division and hate and this side and that side. Exactly, yeah.
Exactly. And so you're seeing that within all of these different factions. To kind of unpack what you talked about in Mama You Never Told Me,
right?
When he says, you running, we running and not moving, and you standing there progressing, right? So, speaking on corporate America, you have these people, right? And you look at these corporations now making huge money. I mean, this is big money.
Oh yeah.
And people are running on a treadmill, right? And then people they're not even moving. You have people that have 200 people underneath them, and they log in and check schedules, and they're not doing much, right? Yet there's this huge disparity in income. And as you're seeing now, like, our parents were able to buy a house, for $30, $40, $50, $60,000, sometimes even less for their first house, right? And their income was 30, 40, 50,000.
Right. Yeah. So that was you're building wealth. Yeah.
Right. Now you look at it and you say, okay, a person's income, let's say, is $100,000, and the home is $500,000.
Right.
So you look out here in Silicon Valley, a person that works at Google, they make $150,000, and to try to buy a home is $150,000. It's $1 million.
Oh yeah, you're not finding $150,000 out there, right?
Right. So you look at it and you say, okay, what's going on? And all of these different groups to where, we'll give Nike money. You have, we'll give, we'll give corporations money.
Right.
Oftentimes, no longer has the individual's interest at hand, right? They can't because they're so big,
right?
They have to supply the masses. So you see that, and everything is being corporatized.
Yeah, I think the ironic thing is that we all sort of realize that this is happening, but each side is told a different story about it. So, like, on one side, we're like, oh, well, we got to rein those guys in. And then the other side is being told, oh, well, you're just temporarily middle class or temporarily poor. If you work hard, you can be like that too. So you don't want to rein them in because one day you might do that too, which for 99% of people, 99.9% of people, that's never going to happen. But they keep that dream alive, I guess.
Working in Silicon Valley now is like playing a professional sport. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, not everybody was getting engineering and computer science degrees.
Right.
Now they're spitting these things out, every year. So you're applying, you have millions of people trying to apply for, jobs, and there's only maybe, 30,000 of those jobs available a year.
Right.
So those are the things that, we're looking at. And so, just to unpack it, and now the new hippie yoga, because yoga is now this big corporate infrastructure.
Yep.
Now, right? So I'm sure you're familiar with. So everything is just being very corporatized, and so for me, its lyrics are always a little bit deeper. Sometimes I can go deeper, and sometimes that's why the songs are a little bit longer. But then oftentimes I may throw something out there, that is, it's a nugget, but obviously it's a little bit deeper than what, people are hearing.
Well, I think the whole yoga thing is funny in another way because it's cultural appropriation, and it's like, as far as it's a practice within a religion or a philosophy that has become commercialized. Like, if I try to go to a yoga studio around here, I would have to pay like $100 a month to do yoga at the yoga studio, which is just insane to me. And they have a gift shop in the yoga studio, and it's like, well, that's not really the intent, right? I mean, that's not what it was supposed to be about.
Yeah. It's yoga. Yeah, and I was having this conversation yesterday where yoga, you have to pay $100, $150 for some, and sometimes you pay $100, $150 a month, and you still have to pay for a towel.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You still have to pay for a towel. You're like,
with a logo on it.
Right? Yeah, I'm like, okay, I can go over here to another gym that I'm paying $30 a month, and they at least give me a towel. What's up with you guys getting $150 a month and you can't give a towel? And because of the socialization. And then you have the $3,500 trainings. But because of the socialization, people, it fits in. Now it becomes this class thing. Because let's say a person says, I don't get a towel for free. Now all of a sudden, that's an embarrassment because they're not willing to pay for the $2 towel even to the planet. Right? So now you have this class pressure that, oh, you don't have the money to do this.
Right, you're being cheap.
Yeah, you're being cheap. And then you have the $2,500 trainings where you could have a 22-year-old person with no experience, no life experience. They pay $3,500. Now they can lead a room of people. Right. Yet they don't have the experience, the cultural experience, the social experience to even make the room comfortable. But because they paid this money, now, they can leave this class. I think
it's just pay for play, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's happening in our world, where like I said, you can fake it now.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the good thing is in my life I've done a lot of things where you just couldn't fake it. Like when you ride a motorcycle and you're trying to jump like 80 feet, like, okay, you either do it and you crash or you don't, right?
Yeah, I was actually about to get into some of that because you were talking about how Silicon Valley was different 20 years ago. So you've had like a pretty crazy life. So you played college football at Utah State, right? When you graduated, over that 4-year period, you had finished second most in interceptions over that 4-year period, behind that's insane. I love college football, so I was like, I didn't even, when we set up the interview, I didn't know that you had this whole background. When I was doing research for it, I found all this out. And then you went and played Canadian football, and then you went into motocross, having never ridden a dirt bike before. Is that right?
Right.
And became a professional within 4 years.
Yes, and that was. I love motocross, so it wasn't like I just picked up the sport. I raced BMX as a child,
right?
So my father. So I had the experience on two wheels, and I mean, I was actually more talented at BMX and soccer than probably anything. And being in the Bay Area, the Bay Area was just rich. It was people like you. It was culturally diverse, racially diverse, education.
Right.
I mean, everything, right? So there was no limitation, and it was working class. So because there was the military bases there, I'm just kind of give you a background.
Yeah.
You were around white kids with working class parents, black kids with working class parents, so-called black kids, Asian, Filipino, Mexican. So it allowed those groups of people to intermingle more closely because their parents worked together,
right?
And the kids went to school together, and the different things that people brought, you never saw limitations. So for me, I think that was one of the things that influenced me as a child. And then when I picked up motocross, I was working in corporate America, and I said, you know what? I had written this book called Don't Stop the Swagger in 2004, and that was before this word swagger was really talked about.
Right.
And you were talking about ranking in Google. I used to rank number 1 for that word, and then I just deleted my website. But anyway, so I wrote that book in 2004, and it was about swagger was this kind of esoteric word within the sports community.
Right.
That meant belief, it meant passion, it meant just inner confidence. It had nothing to do with bling or anything like that. It was like, oh man, he got that swagger, like that. And it came from the Miami Hurricanes, like Michael Irvin and those guys.
Right.
It was the Miami Hurricanes, the U, right? And so I just want to give the real where it came from. And so when I wrote the book, I said I went to a motocross race and I met, at the time, a young rider. He ended up being one of the best riders in the world, but at the time he was just starting. And I bought VIP because the race, the first round of the National Series, was right next to where I worked in Northern California. So I would buy the VIP to go watch it.
Right.
So I bought VIP, and the racer was right next to me. He didn't make the main event. And so, and I watched it, and I was like, dude, man, you didn't make it. I said, man, if you keep riding like that, you are going to be, like, incredible. And so we talked for 4 hours. We watched the main events of both races. And he said, you need to buy a motorcycle. And I said, you need to read my book. So he read my book, and I bought a motorcycle the next year in 2006. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put everything I know about life success into this, and I'm going to see if I can be the first person to race professional motocross and play professional football. And so it ended up happening, and the race was 2009, July of 2009 in Washington. he was racing in the 250 class, and I was racing in the 450 class, and I made it, and he was just like in shock. And that whole time, we built a friendship, and his name is Brett Metcalf. He lives in Australia.
I've heard of that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Brett. Yeah, he's one of the best riders in the world. Right? So, he was considered one of the best riders in the world for about a 3 to 5 year period. And I still talk to him now, and that's what brought me into motocross. And I actually just bought a bike a couple months ago, and so I'm riding again.
Oh, awesome.
You talk about like just freeing your mind, being an artist,
right?
Because I know about all artists, like they not only do they play the guitar or piano, like studying piano or the trumpet or whatever else, they always do something. Maybe not athletic. Maybe they skateboard.
Right.
Maybe they bike. Maybe they surf. Like there's something else,
like meditative almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I know I'm being long-winded, but like motocross is like, it's kind of like something that's meditative where, I could throw the bike around and it just, when you focus just on that, it's very healing for your mind and your body when you can be present on just one thing without all the nonsense. And then I have more creative energy. So
Definitely. We don't get enough of those moments unless we intentionally seek them out. I'm gonna have to pick up your book though. That sounds great. So in your book, you talk about how you've been so successful, because it seems like pretty much everything you try, you've been able to have some success in it.
Well, thank you for saying that. Sometimes it doesn't seem like that. I'm like, man, I need my music. Man, come on, my music. I love music. Like I didn't realize what I found out as you're going on this path. It wasn't like I just go try something. Like if you're good at, ping pong or something, I'm going to be like, oh, I can beat you.
Right.
Nah, it's not that at all. It's kind of things that I have that already have a magnetic connection to.
Right.
Then you just say, oh man, I like this. I enjoy this. I've always liked this, and you start down that path of self mastery. So it's not as if I'm trying to prove to someone but I'm moving in these directions that I already had a magnetic connection to.
Right.
And
so basically find your passions and then just go 100% at them.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And, and I start like a child. Like when I started racing motocross, I was racing I couldn't race in the age group classes, but I raced against the 12-year-olds and the 13-year-olds. Because they're crazy.
Right, because they've been doing it their whole life.
Yeah, but what happened was I started riding like them. And then those guys ended up being my friends. So all those guys are my friends now. Like they're my Facebook friends and everything. Yeah, I mean like legitimate friends. Like yeah.
Well, I guess they're all in their 20s now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So a little bit more about the song. You brought up Dave Chappelle, and well, actually, before we get to Dave Chappelle, you brought up Fox and Bill O'Reilly, which is a pretty typical talking point these days, especially if you're somewhat liberal, which I think both of us kind of are. But you also bring up MSNBC and CNN and call them smiley-faced assassins. You want to say a little bit more about that? Because I agree with you, because I think that obviously Fox News is the most negative as far as towards the least common denominator and all of that stuff. But I think mainstream media in general does try to kind of keep us in our places. Like it's still very, what is that quote? It's like they allow a very vibrant debate, but on a small amount of issues.
Oh yeah, I mean, and they keep the focus. They don't let you go very, very broad, right? Into the really the context and the behind. What are people really thinking? I mean, if you, oh man, I mean, I won't say that because let me stick here because I know when people listen, they take snippets. So
right.
But it was just a point that I understand the other side.
Yeah.
like I can understand the other side. I can see where, not that I agree with it,
Right.
I fight for them, not that I advocate for them, but I understand why they are doing what they're doing. It's wrong, like say the alt-right, right? I can understand where they're at. So when you look at Dave Chappelle, like you said, NBC, CNN, Fox News are smiley-faced assassin. Dave Chappelle left Hollywood when he found out it was Hollyweird.
Right.
They said it's crazy, yeah, right? So it was speaking on when you it's like in the neighbor, all of what we have right now is we have people that will look you in your face, smile at you, and they will literally pull the rug from everything that you're trying to do.
Right.
I mean, and this is like your average person.
Yeah.
They won't be physically aggressive, and that's why they're even worse, because they won't punch you in the face. They won't even curse at you. They'll just smile at you in the face, and they'll pull a rug, and then it becomes very hard to even use the law or anything because it's all covert psychological warfare.
From an
tactics.
outside perspective, they didn't do anything wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
Exactly. They didn't do it wrong, right? And they're even worse, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from the South, the deep South, and my family is very conservative. I would call them racist. They're not like hate black people racist, but they would have freaked out if I had brought a black girl home or something. They're racist. They are racist. And so I come from that perspective, and now I live up in New England area. And what I've found is it's still pretty racist up here. It's just different, and it's like to me it's a little bit of a scarier racism, because up here everyone will swear up and down that they're not racist, whereas in the South, like, what you see is what you get for the most part. It's like, all right, you got a rebel flag in the back of your truck, I got it, I know where you stand. But there's a lot of people up here in power positions that are a lot more subtly racist, and that's even scarier in some ways to me, like, because it's not something that you can just see. And I think that's kind of what you're saying with the whole smiley-faced assassin thing.
Yeah. I mean, they don't show you their cards. I mean, everything that they do is very covert, so it becomes very hard to put your finger on it. But it's there, and so MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, smiley-faced assassins, where they're smiling at you, telling you, not even telling you the whole truth. What they're doing is mixing truth and lie, which is the most dangerous thing.
Right.
You enough truth to pull you in and say, oh, okay, that's true. The sky is blue, right?
Right.
And then, on the flip side, they're saying, it's healthy outside, and then they're dropping chemicals on your head or something. Right?
Yeah,
so,
a lot of false equivalency, for sure.
Yeah. So, and then speaking on Dave Chappelle, when he attempted to even leave, how the amount of people that turned on him.
Oh, yeah. Well,
right?
I definitely, the rumor that I heard, I was like 15 or 16, was that he got addicted to crack, which is insane. Like, that's not the story at all. And obviously, I'm sure you've seen the new stand-up specials, like the more recent ones.
Yes.
Where he kind of goes a little bit more into depth about, I mean, he doesn't out and out say it, and the fact that he's still like cautious about saying exactly what went on is frightening, I guess, because like what happened. But just the fact that he that they did a smear campaign on him because he wouldn't play ball the way that they wanted him to, basically, is so messed up. Yeah, and that we all ate it up. That we were all like, "Oh yeah, I guess he does crack. Yeah, that makes sense." Right,
and when this guy lives out in the country in Ohio, like, he's a disciplined guy. Like, he eats well. Like, I mean, it's like Dave was saying, you can't get to this level and be a weak person, right? Like, at some point you have to buck up, and you have to show yourself. You can't fake it anymore. You can't just post a picture and get a million likes and at some point you have to show someone that you can do something,
right?
And so that was kind of, you see all of this stuff going on, and it's not a jab at anybody. For me, it was just, saying what you see and maybe giving reverence to a person that, you know, I thought was authentically, you know, he was funny. He was really a funny guy, and I don't want to criticize Dave. I like David Chappelle a lot.
Right.
And I think if I look at him now from an intellectual point, and this could just be me, I'm just saying it's just me, and I could be wrong, and I wouldn't mind if a person said I was wrong. He's not as funny as he was because I think he's more conscientious. He's not fearful, but he's just, I think he's questioning what he's doing now. He sees the veil has been lifted completely.
Yeah. I think he definitely had like an idealistic view about what he was doing, and I think I understand what he was trying to do, which was tear down every race so that none of it's an issue, right? But I think that was an idealistic way to view it, and you know, one of the things he said about why he walked away was people screaming out stuff like re-quoting him while he's on stage, and it's like, you know, some redneck white dude doing it, and it's like, all right, well, the message that I'm trying to get across is not getting across.
Yeah. He started to look at. He said he started to look at his audience, and it wasn't the fact that his audience looked different, but some of the time the people in his audience, there was a disconnect with him and that person. Meaning, you could have this fundamental racist in your group that loves in the audience that loves your art, and you're like, okay, like, you know, what am I doing? I don't know. This is just me.
They weren't in on the second layer of the joke, right? Like they were just taking the first layer of the joke and then reinforcing racism, sort of, instead of viewing it as this thing that's talking about the whole of humanity, you know.
So that, you know, that was kind of, you know, you know, it's a lot. You know, Mama, You Never Told Me is, you know, I grew up in this household of, you know, black parents, mother and father, and my mother was incredible woman, worked in Silicon Valley. My father was also an engineer, and you know, my parents didn't put a lot of stuff in my brain, you know, that was negative. So Mama, You Never Told Me was kind of like, when I started this artistic walk, my mom was like, she was sort of, you know, like questioning it, and I was like, Mama, it was like, Mama, you never told me, you know. It was like my response to her thing. And I remember when I started on the path, and she was visiting, and she said something to me, I can't remember. And so, and it was very enlightening, and this was, I mean, Mama, You Never Told Me was kind of my beautiful response to my mother, you know.
Right.
It wasn't a talking back. It was like this kind of beautiful response, like a song. It was almost like for her, not in a negative way, but just like, you know, Mom, this is for you. You know, it really was. It was like, this is my response to everything you didn't tell me. This is what I've seen.
Right. So these are all the obstacles that I didn't know about going into it. Yeah.
Yes.
I do have a question. So we have Mama, You Never Told Me Part 1, and then there's Part 2. And the difference in Part 2 is like the first verse is a little different. The instrumentals are different. I was wondering what the choice was there. Was it like two different versions and you couldn't really decide, so you just went with both? Or like how what's the connection between the Part 1 and Part 2? Now, Part 2 seems to be focusing mostly on job offers, or like the way that reverse racism a little bit, or people talking about reverse racism, which I don't think reverse racism can exist, because racism to me is punching down, and you can't punch back up if you're already on top. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. So what's the...
Oh, that's good. So Mama, You Never Told Me was first, like, in performance, which I did this like, it was like, it's like 8 to 12 minutes of just straight vocals.
Okay.
Like, I'll throw down with anybody. So it was like just, and so when we were recording, it was like, okay, it's just too long. Like, it's got to break it up. It's even longer than those two songs. So then I wrote for the second version. I wrote the verses about just inside, you know, John fits the image, you know.
Right. So
I wrote the verses, you know, about the dynamic of, you know, what really happens, you know, inside. You know, it's not that you don't have qualified black people. You have very qualified black people. It's not that you don't have qualified women. You have very qualified women. Let's just say in Silicon Valley, whenever you're going for an engineering job, you have whites in power and you have Indians. So typically, whenever you apply, you're going to be 7 out of 10 times you're going to stand in front of either a white male or Indian.
Right.
So within Silicon Valley in itself, Indians used to be part of the minority, but now they're not because they were hiring each other.
Right.
So, my point is, like, there's so many dynamics that go in there, and now when you go back in it, some of them, they have some problems because people started realizing that, and then they started forming these alliances. So the white males started forming alliances, and they're going to hire each other, and you could see it, right? And then so really the people that are left out, your Hispanics, your blacks, and different things, where it becomes even more difficult,
right? Even
the qualified, right? So I was just trying to speak on that to say it's more complex than people being qualified and and having everything in row. It's the dynamic of which you try to get in the door.
When you have stuff like affirmative action, but that gets taken advantage of all the time too, and then you have the other side that says that they don't see the point in affirmative action because that's taking away a job from a qualified white guy or whatever, which they don't understand that most of those programs are paid for by the government, so it's not taking a job away from anyone, it's just adding a job. But
you have to do some of those things. A corporation would have to implement some affirmative action for special needs or women or blacks. Not even just blacks. It's like blacks, we fought for all of these human rights and civil rights in the 60s, and in reality, we don't even benefit from them all. You have European immigrants that benefit from them. You have other benefiting from me, So it's not like everyone thinks, oh, it's blacks. No, the majority of people on welfare are white. So it's more complex, and that was kind of my statement. And then in the interview where I talked about, white males are now, filing class action lawsuits. It was interesting. Before I left corporate America, I had a very, very reputable person, tell me, and I'd never say who it was, but they, what was right or wrong. They said that is the number one class action lawsuit is white males over 40 filing, so you look at, that's a
feeling like problem. They lost their job or that they don't have good job prospects because of minority hires and stuff.
Whatever, minority female hires, because even more that are getting hired now is women, right? Women, it's never been, more of an opportunity for women to, advance themselves in career, and rightfully so. So, it's never been this opportunity before, so that I've seen. But yeah, so I just kind of talk about that, but I don't even really think about corporate and social. It's kind of spiritually you're connected to this stuff, so you're just. There was a time years ago, and like 10 plus years ago, where I would watch Fox News and CNN. I can't remember. I can't even tell you the last time I've watched Fox News, CNN, or NBC. It's probably been like 3 years.
Yeah, I don't do it anymore either.
Yeah,
it's propaganda regardless. Like much.
But just what you feel and what that's where things are coming from. So I just pull from my mind. Sort of works. I guess on these truths or these things that I connect with, and then, I'll implement it into, writing, and then from there, that's where the song evolves, and just the music, it may be more rock or something like that. I worked with, my guy Marco on that, which was, it was a beautiful thing because he was like, let's do this. I know you have the piano, but let's implement this. And I was like, yeah, I think that may work. And so it worked. And for me as an artist, I think that it's not like my music is. It's not so eclectic and it's very palatable.
Definitely,
it's very palatable. So it's not like it's just this noise and stuff, right? But
Right.
it's palatable, so I think.
But it is diverse.
Yeah, but it's just diverse,
Right.
right? So, and that's what it's not like I could go do some heavy metal. Not that I'm criticizing it, but
Right.
I don't think that would probably
Wouldn't fit into what you're attempting to do.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, those of you that are out there listening, there is a 5-song EP called it's something Meditations. Help me out, Rafa.
Meditation music.
Meditation music, yeah, and it's all piano, and I've been listening to it a lot lately whenever I'm like working on stuff because it's just so relaxing in the background. Like, it's great. All right, one more question while we're on the part 1 and part 2. So you mentioned LinkedIn profiles, and it got me thinking a little bit. Like when I was about to graduate college, I remember we had someone come by and they're like, clean up your social media profiles before you go out and try to get a job. Make sure you're not like smoking weed or drinking or anything right in the middle, in the front of it. And I was wondering, like, that's something I can change, right? Like, that's something I can just turn off and clean up, and it's not a big deal. But as an African American or black guy, I don't know how the best way to say that, whatever. But do you think that people, whenever they're screening for these jobs, do like discriminate based on just the profile picture being a different color than someone else?
Oh, for sure. That is an absolute fact. There was a couple of studies on that done by major publications where they would have same qualifications. They would change the picture from blackface to, whiteface.
Just the same exact profile?
Same exact profile. Yeah. So, so the racism and bias now is so covert that everyone's trying to just figure out a way where they don't get caught doing it. Right? So that's what makes it bad. The thing about racism in itself is now the world is so complex. This isn't America of 20 years or 30 years ago.
Right.
You absolutely need a diverse workforce for creativity, for innovation. And I don't even mean like just throwing some women in age. You actually need some intelligent, very aware people to solve the complex problems that companies are going to face.
Yep. Well, that's why if you're just trying to sell things, the landscape of the country is different than it was 20 years ago, right?
Yeah. So it's really, and you can see it where corporations are now. They're trying to. That's why they're appropriating, influencers. I'll get for my Instagram profile, I'll get people reaching out to me to now kind of represent corporation, whether it's shoes or different things like that, and it's because they're losing that connection. They have to have teams that understand the world that they're working in now. So LinkedIn that's like a known fact. You see a person, they get their resume and they can go on LinkedIn. So before it even goes into the system, they can go on LinkedIn and choose whether or not they're going to bring you in. That doesn't even go into the system.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point I was trying to make with telling my story about cleaning up my LinkedIn or whatever, is that's not something I even really thought about from a racial angle. It's just like these are choices I can make to make myself more palatable, whereas some people don't have a choice at all. It's just your face.
Have a choice, but you can't. The message is, I think you can't allow it. That is real, but you can't allow that to stop you from doing what you need to do. You have to, and I really mean this, and I say this all the time. You have to try to master your craft and do everything you can personally to remove all the personal obstacles out of the way, so that you give a person no excuse. And eventually, it could be a tougher road, because I've certainly had challenges, and I've had people that have that are in pretty prominent positions now. And corporate America was pretty good to me, but in other situations, there's always things that you face. But you have to remove all the personal obstacles and master your craft so that you give no one, no reason. And you can't allow like a negative expectation or fear to like just stop you.
Right.
Because then the only option then is that you'll never change your situation.
Right.
So people don't like to hear that because racism is real.
Right.
And it's even deeper and it's more strategic than what people realize. But you still have to master your craft. You have to relate to people, and you have to give people a chance to relate to you. And that's what's happening, like, right here. No one's telling me to say what I'm saying. I mean,
right.
we're two different shades, but I think we're connected.
Well, I think it's definitely a double-edged sword, and on my part, I need to, and I do try to, convince white people like me that racism is real and that I can't blame people's failures solely on them. I can't just be like, oh, well, just pick up yourself up by your bootstraps, because I don't understand what a lot of people go through, what a lot of people grew up in, and all the challenges, the systemic social challenges that they're facing. But I do think the other side of the sword is that successful people of color need to also say, but if you work hard enough, then you can overcome. And it's both, right? There needs to be an admission that I have privilege. I have tons of privilege, but it's not. No one is in an impossible situation. They're just varying degrees of really, 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 really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you. I think I'm very thankful for my life, but I have seen some very tough odds that it's difficult for people to overcome.
Right.
But I have seen people overcome it. I did some work in Brazil where I've seen women and young men overcome tremendous odds. What people have to understand when you talk about like systemic racism, let's say my grandfather had all the talent and even more talent than I had, but in 1930, 40, he wasn't allowed to have property. The bank just wouldn't give him a loan,
right.
Just because they wouldn't do it.
Yep.
You were in Jim Crow, they just wouldn't do it, right?
Yep.
So what does that do? That stops his ability to build wealth, right?
Yep.
So and let's just talk about one thing. It stops his ability to build wealth. Now, but how does that impact his psyche and his mind going forward, right? What kind of things does that put on him? So then my father has to start over,
Yep.
right? So then he starts over with them. My father's in civil rights era. What does that push on a person? So then now what does that do to him? Now that's two generations of, 50, 60 years of trying to overcome this system where for some people you can get to a point to where it's not possible.
Right.
And then you get to me, it's only by God's grace that, okay, I have the fighting power to start this race over again, right?
Right.
So, but on the flip side, you can have a person that is white. It wasn't that their parents didn't work hard, but they bought the one house for $2,000.
Right.
They died, it was worth $60,000.
Right.
They left their son $55,000. He was able to not only purchase his house for cash, but he was able to start a business.
Yep. That's what they talk about with the generational curses and the generational inequality. There's this series on Netflix that's been going on called Explained, and one of the first episodes is on the racial wealth gap, and it brings up the same point that you basically just said, is most people of color are generations behind, and that becomes exponential as the economy grows and as inflation goes up and as all of these things sort of compile. That you have a white friend that's the same age as you and had your parents had similar jobs, your grandparents had similar jobs. They're still going to be standing several steps ahead of you just because of systemic racism.
Yeah, I mean, I can say growing up, my father, he talks about the things that I faced. He didn't know if I could do it because of what he had saw.
Right.
Now, he didn't know, but this is what he did. He wrote all my colleges to get a scholarship. He was at every single game. My father worked for the Department of Defense as an engineer. So my dad was a legit dude, but he didn't know if I could do it. And this was a person that participated, that took me. I mean, I remember when I played in University of Oregon, and I'm in Oregon, in Eugene, and I look in the stands, and my dad's like, man, what's up? He just shows up, right?
That's awesome.
And then after the game, I talked to him for 2 minutes. I'm like, are you going to stay around? He's like, no, I'm driving back home.
Yeah.
Like, that was my father. So a person that was engaged, but he didn't even know if I could make it given the odds that I was facing. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it's that's the realization of privilege, right? Like, I've spent most of my life never questioning if I can make it or not, or if I'm going to end up as a statistic of some sort. Most of the time, I don't think about that at all, and that's the privilege, right? I don't even have to think about it. Whereas you or your father or whatever, that's at the forefront of your mind, and you're going to fight the odds anyway, but the odds are still at the forefront of your mind, and that's not even something that I had to consider. So, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead,
but he still did the work. He still wrote the college, and he still did the work, and it ended up working out. So, but I look at that, and I say, that's what you have to do. Just be willing to do the work, and not get distracted by the challenges and the noise. Because see, now there's a lot of noise, and I think the noise is so bad now that it can hinder people from accomplishing their goals, because it's almost like they're making it seem like things are insurmountable now.
Right.
And I can say I've spoken to a lot of people. Both, I was in Starbucks. This was not recently. I've been in there, but it was about 2 years ago, and it was an older white gentleman. And so I would do some work in there, and I said, man, I said, what do you see right now? And he started talking. I mean, he was very polished, and he was in shape, and he was 70.
Right.
He said, man, I feel for you guys. I've never seen it this bad. And so when you talk to, that was a white man.
Right.
When you talk to older gen, and then when you talk to some of my black male friends, it's the same conversation that they're having. Like, things, the social dynamic now, it's like, it's what hyper warp speed the last 3 years, it's 2 years or whatever. It's like, we were literally, you didn't feel this kind of social heat.
No,
I don't know.
It was. I mean, I guess it was underground to some degree, but it wasn't so brazen and just out in the open. Yeah. Yeah.
So, we have to be very. That's why this is, it's beautiful, man. This interview. That I believe, I'll grow, and this would be something people, listen to, and they get a chance to hear a real conversation of two people having, that makes a difference.
Yeah, that's the whole point of us wanting to talk, and that's something that we've tried to do with several different subjects throughout, because I think what got us into this mess is not communicating, is assuming everything was okay, assuming we knew what the other side was thinking, like whatever, not that we're on opposite sides, but assuming you knew what any group or person or whatever was thinking, and not actually having the conversation. I think one of the most frustrating things, just to end up this point that we were just talking about, as far as picking yourself up by the bootstraps versus acknowledging privilege and racism, I think one of the most frustrating things is you have someone like Kendrick Lamar, who put out To Pimp a Butterfly, that had songs like Black of the Berry and All Right on it, and it's positive, but it's also pointing out some issues within the black community, and he's a black person, so he's allowed to do that. But because of that, he gets called an Uncle Tom or something, and it gives ammunition to those white people that are looking for ammunition to say, well, look, this person of color over here is criticizing another person of color, so what we've been saying the whole time is right. And I think that's the really frustrating thing, is there are no group, no individual, whatever, is without reproach or without some sort of room to grow. But it seems like every time either, not that there's only two sides, but either side, any side of an issue says something, it gets weaponized by one side or the other, or both sides. And that's where this whole thing becomes very difficult. Like, you could just take a clip from something you said and turn it into whichever side you want it to.
Wow. So I guess you're asking my question, my thoughts on that?
Yeah, or I am just ending it up.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Philosophically, that seems like a frustration.
You're asking me a serious question. So for me, yeah, Kendrick Lamar is brilliant. He's an example for me, lyrically, artistically,
right?
And what he's overcome. So, and then with that being said, he's accurate. I think nobody is beyond reproach, but I think for me, what I try to do is evaluate myself, and I say, can I do better?
Right.
Yeah, I could, probably, I'm about 100 miles from my hometown, but I did volunteer and do some work there. But what could I do more to help, right? And so it's hard for me to criticize, say my community,
right?
But I do see, because I'm looking at myself,
right?
So, but I do realize, I think I see things a little bit deeper. Kendrick Lamar has some experiences, but I may have a little bit more experience in other areas, and then you have more experience than me in some areas. So I think, you can see some things within, like all communities, but in our community specifically, that can be frustrating.
I imagine just the role of taking on being a role model, is an impossible task, really, especially in today's hyper social media society that's looking at every single angle of every single thing.
Yeah. I mean, I say things like, within our community, you can change things economically when you understand how powerful your dollar is. Like, you have a black community that spends over $1 trillion. It's $1 trillion industry. Now, what could you do if those dollars were,
right,
directly going towards areas that were going to benefit you, or that would allow these smaller businesses to grow, mid-level businesses to become major corporations, major corporations to become just industry standard, right?
Well, and the added benefit of hurting some companies that are hurting you, they're hurting your community, yeah. Right.
So you have to, there's many things that we can look at and tackle, and I think it always starts with yourself. I think that's the hardest thing, and that's what I say for me. And the mistakes I've had in my life, I say, man, like I talked about before, it's like, okay, what could I have done? What didn't I do? Okay, now that I removed all of my personal obstacles, okay, now we can deal with this racism.
Right.
Now I know the reason. Why did I get this job? Like, I'm better than this guy.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons a lot of blacks choose sports, because sports is one of the only places. It's not because they weren't intelligent, but that was one of the only places where meritocracy won.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, that was one of the only places where if you were better, you got rewarded.
Yeah. So
we would gravitate there because we knew, okay, if I do what it takes, I'm going to do well. And the irony in that's why Terrell Owens, this big Hall of Fame fiasco, became so big, because it was like, the one thing that you guys say is meritocracy, and it takes me 3 years to get in the Hall of Fame, and you induct, Ryan Urlacher, you induct all these other individuals that have had, bigger issues, than I've had in the first year of the Hall of Fame. And so, what I'm saying to I guess to kind of Kendrick Lamar is it always starts with you.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's a hard thing, and people don't want to hear that. And I say that with love, but then I also say when it starts with me and I fix my issue, I'm gonna be looking at you that you hold up your end of the bargain, and if you don't, we're gonna have a problem.
Definitely. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on the Terrell Owens thing too. And I find it frustrating in general. It goes back to the media thing that we were talking about. Yes, Fox News is going to be hypercritical, but even ESPN, which is a little bit more left leaning, and MSNBC, whatever, are going to take these sorts of celebrities like Terrell Owens or Kanye West or whatever and blow up their supposed arrogance without acknowledging that their arrogance or their belief in themselves or their pride is what got them to where they're standing in the first place. You know, that those personality flaws that they view in these people are, and you know, maybe they are, but you're glossing over the fact that that's the entire reason that they're sitting where they're sitting at the moment.
Let me ask you a question. If you have a person that doesn't like you or front of you, doesn't believe in you, doesn't care for you, doesn't give you any energy, is just indifferent to you. If you take on what they believe in about you,
right?
What would you be?
Nothing. You'd be bad. you would be lazy, and you'd be all those things. Yeah.
Right. So 7 out of the 10 people that you are coming in contact with are giving you that energy. You have to get to the point where you're like, I'm going to do this no matter what.
Exactly.
And people, and I'll say this, people don't understand the level of not direct hostility, but silent, covert hostility that black males face, especially the talented ones.
Right.
And a guy like Terrell Owens comes from a small town in Alabama. Terrell Owens is a good kid. I'm telling you, I know athletes.
Yeah.
He is a good guy. The reason he's had some of the problems is because of the kind of guy that he was. He was a country, simple, young guy like some of these athletes are, raised by his grandma,
right,
going to the NFL. Now he's got all of these women chasing after this dude who looks like an African god body. He looks good. He's handsome.
Right.
He's intelligent.
Yeah.
You know? And so the ESPN, if you realize they made big money criticizing Terrell.
Yeah.
People like Mark Schlereth and Skip Bayless,
yep,
they made a living off of criticizing Terrell Owens, and ESPN now they can't even correct it.
Yeah, by voting him in when he was supposed to.
They created they basically, I mean, Terrell literally, if he got a good lawyer, would have a good case
for like defamation
of character against ESPN.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they like to have their villain, and they had him. And I think, even though that's not okay, it would have been forgiven had they voted him in at the beginning, because it's like, all right,
yes,
you at least held up your end of the bargain. I was your entertainment for all these years. Now help me out. Yeah, that's a good point, and literally an angle I'd never thought about on it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, now honor him, get him in the first year, and then they could have corrected, but no, they Skip Bayless, Mark Schlereth, all these silent racists like Mark Schlereth. I mean, let me say this: Mark Schlereth was on ESPN, and I would watch him. He would spend, me and my lady would watch him. He would spend 2 hours every Sunday criticizing Terrell Owens. And Mark Schlereth is 6'5", 320 pounds, and I will punch him in the face. No, I mean literally,
yeah,
like I would fight Mark Schlereth, like, because it was so nasty.
Right.
What he did. You could
dog
see,
whistle. Dog whistle, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Where it's like it's not on the nose racist, but you can tell that it all has the undertone with it.
Oh man,
yeah,
you could see what he was doing. I would like put me in a room with him. He's 6'5", 320 pounds. Like, he's a horrible, horrible, horrible dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I say. These guys are a lot of these people that you're running into now, oh man, like they make Donald Trump look. I mean,
well, it goes back to what we were talking about before, where at least Trump, you kind of know what you're getting with him. It's the people that try to act like there's something else, but are covertly messing with you.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, Terrell Owens. People don't really understand how strong you have to be mentally to withstand the kind of criticism that he's faced. And I say. And that's what I say, that influences you as an artist when you are connected to the world. You care, you feel for people, all people. You really feel that. And you're like, man, so your art, when I wrote Red Blooded American album, this came out in 2017. Now you have, Childish Gambino, This Is America, all of this different stuff. So I was like seeing this stuff, way before, it was happening. So
yeah, definitely, and I think that all of the whole album's still very relevant. And I was actually, before we went past it, was going to bring up that video because I did see some mirrors between between Childish Gambino's "This Is America" and the album, which I thought that at the time. So, do you want to start to wrap this up a little bit? But I actually have a little fun quiz to play at the end to try to lighten it on the way out. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah. Man, great conversation. I'm so excited that we got to do this. So we play a quiz with all of our guests at the end. It's different questions every time. The best that anyone's done is 4.5 out of 5. Don't ask me how she got a half point. I don't really know. But and the worst is 0 out of 5. So you just got to get one right, and you won't be at the bottom of the leaderboard. But if you get 4 out of 5, I think you're solidly in second. So anyway, let's see how you do. There are 5 questions. They all have something to do with something that we talked about or an aspect of your life or bio that I didn't necessarily get to. So, number 1, speaking of Dave Chappelle, what 50-year-old book penned by Iceberg Slim reappeared on the bestseller charts after its mention in his recent stand-up special, The Bird Revelation?
Say that again?
So it's a book that Dave Chappelle mentioned in his recent stand-up special, The Bird Revelation, and the book was written by Iceberg Slim.
I do not know.
It's just called Pimp, and in in the stand-up, he uses it kind of as a metaphor to talk about the Hollywood machine and a bunch of stuff, really, but just capitalism in general, and how we all are kind of pimping each other out in various ways. All right, number 2. You mentioned Monsanto, and we didn't get to talk about that, but you mentioned Monsanto in part 1. What food documentary, narrated by Eric Schlosser, exposed a look into Monsanto's practice of suing lowly farmers for reusing seeds, and would win even if the farmer didn't use Monsanto seeds, but their neighbor's farm did? So it's a food documentary that talks heavily about Monsanto suing other people for reusing their seeds.
I watched that documentary. Was it Food Incorporated?
Yeah, Food Inc. There you go. So that was my first exposure to the terribleness of Monsanto, who creates the Roundup and then creates this only seed that can go with the Roundup, and then just goes around and sues people until they're dominant.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
all right, number 3. Oh, sorry, what?
Yeah, we watched that documentary. There's a few others too.
Yeah, there are more after that. I know there's the GMO OMG that goes a little bit into it. I don't know. I like food documentaries.
Yep.
All right, number 3. You mentioned in your bio that Tupac is one of your biggest influences. What critically acclaimed 2015 hip-hop album plays out a long poem to and cobbled together interview with Tupac Shakur? So what?
That's Kendrick Lamar's album.
Yeah. Do you know what it's called?
What was that? Pimp a Butterfly?
To Pimp a Butterfly. Yep. Yeah, that's ridiculous. The first time I listened to it, and you get to the end, and you realize who he's talking to the whole time. It's crazy.
Yeah. That was beautiful, man, and a bit artistic. I mean, that's what you want. I mean,
yeah, and Taylor Swift's 1989 beat it out for Album of the Year. But whatever. I mean, whatever. That album had, I guess, some good pop hits on it, but as far as the crafting and artistry, it's not anywhere close.
Right, yeah.
All right.
The same when Kanye, when she beat out Beyonce.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
but then we wouldn't have gotten My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy if he hadn't done all that. So.
And then Taylor wouldn't be the big superstar. I mean, she'd be big.
Yeah.
She's big, so.
Yeah, then he came out with that song, Famous, that he, basically was like, yeah. All right, number 4. You spent some time in the CFL and college football. What CFL team does former Texas A&M Aggies Heisman-winning quarterback Johnny Manziel currently play for?
Oh, Montreal Alouettes.
Yep, and he looked terrible the other night.
I didn't watch. He didn't look that good.
He threw 4 picks in like 3 quarters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which, I mean, Montreal's pretty bad, so he doesn't have much of a supporting cast. But
yeah.
All right, last one. So you're 3 out of 4. If you get this one right, you will be solidly in second place. Speaking of motocross, what motocross racer had a series of 3 video games named after him from 1998 to 2001?
Oh man, it's either from 1998 to
1998 to 2001 was definitely like the biggest name in motocross at that time.
It's either Jeremy McGrath or I would say Jeremy McGrath or Travis Pastrana, but it's probably Jeremy McGrath.
It was Jeremy McGrath. Yep.
Yep.
Nice. 4 out of 5. All right. We'll have to update the leaderboard. You're in second place now.
I was getting scared. I'm like, oh, man.
No, yeah, you nailed it. And it sounded like you knew the first one, just maybe the way that I asked it was.
Yeah, the first one I was like, wait a minute. Iceberg Slim.
I haven't read the book yet, but I want to ever since seeing the stand-up special because it seemed like a really interesting metaphor for the ills of capitalism, I guess, like the sorts of things that go wrong in capitalism. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not a socialist by any means, but I think that where capitalism now, it's not even capitalism. That's oligarchies and just monopoly.
Yeah, I agree. I'm for the free market, but the ultimate goal of any company is to be the only company, in their field or whatever, and you have to have something to hold that back, or we get into a huge mess where they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for a smaller business. It's hard for smaller business to do business now. So.
Yeah. All right, so on the way out, we're going to play part 2, and thanks so much for being with us, Rafa. Is there anything that you wanted to say that didn't come up or that we didn't ask about?
Well, it's been good, man. It's been good. Look it up. Go to Spotify. What streaming service do you guys use for the music?
We have we're about to put your songs on our August Spotify playlist, so they can check it out there. But you're on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, everything.
Yeah, check it out. Check out the music. Blow it up. Share it. Let's get it out there. Yeah. Thank you for the interview.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. Thanks for being with me.
All right.
And boop. Uh-oh. I may have knocked it off. If anyone's still watching, I'm queuing it up now. It's just taking.
Corporate ship. Hard to be exceptional when you sense rejection, though. Big ship, slow turning, overpacked. Becky's connected, Malik is qualified, John fits the image. Who gets hired is the question. It's popular now for white males over 40 to file class action discrimination lawsuits. Not saying it's not possible, but goodness gracious, how times have changed. LinkedIn profile. It's the photo interview before the no interview. Careful what picture you post. Mama, you never told me I had to look like Brad Pitt. Mama, you didn't raise no Hollywood Fox drone. Bill O'Reilly, MSNBC, CNN are smiley-faced assassins. When Dave Chappelle left Hollywood, he found out it was Holly weird. They said he was crazy, yet he was submitted and he was lazy. They was mad that the money was gone. The meal ticket left them Hollywood drones. Like Chappelle said, only the strong survive. A weak man can't get by. Mama, you never told me, but you did tell me God don't make no mistakes. Before I was winning, you was sinning. You was investing in this human experiment. You won, daddy won, family won. Sit back and relax, tell your sisters, my aunties, my son is doing it, I'm watching, and I'm done. See, don't get it twisted, I got promoted, yep, even got a few bonuses, but that corporate shit ain't playing, nope. Mama, you never told me. Mama, you never told me. But you did tell me. God don't make no mistakes. See, Mama, you never told me, but you did tell me. Work hard, prepare yourself, be diligent, be consistent. Expect the obstacles, the challenges, the struggles. Thank you, Mama. You never told me.